Exodus chapter 3, verse 1 onwards. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called unto him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Draw not nigh hither, put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people, which are in Egypt, and I have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. And I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of the land unto a good land and unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come unto me. And I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppress them. Come now therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth thy people, for my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. For 40 years, Moses lived the life of a prince of Egypt. The next 40 years, however, he became a shepherd, a profession which was disgusting to the Egyptians. We read in Genesis that every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians. The first 40 years, he learned to be mighty in word and in deed, while the next 40 years, it was a lesson to be the meekest man in all the earth. He was a nobody in the wilderness of Horeb, tending the flock of his father-in-law all by himself. Here alone, God is giving him a vision of himself. This is an object lesson to Moses. He saw a bramble, an insignificant, ordinary thorn bush found commonly in the desert. The bush was on fire and should have been consumed within a few minutes. Yet it kept on burning. This was possible because the Lord was in the bush. We read in Deuteronomy chapter 33 verse 16, while Moses was giving his blessings to the tribe of Joseph, he says, and the favor of him who dwells in the bush, we read there. Though Moses was now an insignificant person after 40 years of being a shepherd in a foreign land, he could hold the glory of God without being consumed. We too, though earthen vessels, may hold the treasure of the presence of God within us without being destroyed. Paul says through the Spirit in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of God may rest upon me. Peter says in 1 Peter 5 and verse 5, clothe yourself with humility toward one another, because God is opposed to the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. In Isaiah 66, the prophet Isaiah says these words about God: heaven is my throne and the earth is my footstool for my feet. Where then is a house you could build for me? And where is a place that I may rest? For my hand made all these things. So all these things came into being, declares the Lord. But I will look to this one, at one who is humble and contrite in spirit, and who trembles at my word. Remember the time when Samuel went into the house of Jesse to look for a king. He looked at all the boys who sat for the meal and said to Jesse, "Are these all the boys?" And he said, "The youngest is still left, but behold, he is tending the sheep." So Samuel said to Jesse, "Send word and bring him, for we will not take our places at the table until he comes here." So he sent word and brought him in. Now he was reddish, with beautiful eyes and a handsome appearance. And the Lord said, "Arise, anoint him, for this is he." So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. You may be insignificant today compared to all others, but God chooses anyone whose heart is in a position where he or she chooses to listen to God and to know him. God introduces himself as the God of Abraham and of Isaac and Jacob, the God of the living. He has not forgotten the promise made to them, even though their sojourn in Egypt is around 400 years now. We read, God heard their cry. God saw their afflictions, and God remembered his covenant, and God took notice of them. Exodus chapter 2, verse 24 and 25. He is a God who is alive and active and knows their present condition in all its entirety. Moses need not update God of the present condition of his people. The time had come for the deliverance of Israel from Egypt, but they were too tired and miserable to recognize it. Moses, in his exile, had also apparently forgotten about the promise, but God remembered his covenant, being faithful and unchanging in his love. Therefore, the second thing he did was to tell Moses that he was about to take his people to the land flowing with milk and honey. Thirdly, he told Moses the most crucial part of his plan. Verse 10, "Come now, therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." With all Moses' difficulties in Midian, one concrete benefit was there. He did not have to face Pharaoh anymore. But now, God was confronting him with the very thing he did not want to do. The only motivating force he had to back him up was the command of the living God, the knowledge that he was obeying God and that therefore God was with him to carry out his will through him. He had nothing else at all, but that knowledge would be all he needed. The very thing that we fear in our life, that we were fleeing away from, God will enable us to confront it when we come face to face with him. In every encounter with God, these three realities are essential. When Paul had his encounter with God on the way to Damascus, he fell down from the donkey. The first question he asked was, "Who are you, Lord?" When he understood that the voice from heaven was that of Jesus of Nazareth, whom he had persecuted, he realized that he was fighting against God himself. The next question was, "What do you want me to do?" And then Ananias explains God's plan and his role in that plan. He said in Acts 22 verse 14, said, "God of our fathers has appointed you to know his will and to see the righteous one and to hear a message from his mouth. For you will be a witness for him to all people, of what you have seen and heard. Today, we need not wait for a burning bush experience to know God. He has revealed himself in these last days through his Son and has passed on to us the written testimony about his Son. We have a revelation of God which is so much better and greater and more complete than what Moses saw and heard from the burning bush. Anyone who is humble and contrite in spirit, they can expect God to look upon them. He would indeed speak to them and reveal to them his plan of salvation and the future of his people to the numerous prophecies we find in his word. It is important for us to understand his plan for his people because we are called to be in one body. Finally, the revelation includes your role in this plan. Without this, the encounter is not complete. We need to diligently ask him of our calling and giftings and how we can be of use in his kingdom. Our whole life purpose can be encapsulated in these three objectives: to know God, to know his plan for his people, and what is my role in that plan. God bless.